Once upon a time, two friends joined forces to bring you the best in horror entertainment. Brian from the north, Tim from the south, each bringing their own unique perspective to the horror community. Movie reviews, Blu-ray releases, beer pairings, games, and more. Welcome to your new home for horror. This is Civil Gore.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the Civil Gore Podcast. I'm your host, Tim.
And this is Brian, and we're finally getting to you our final of the Slaycation. Even though we promised you it'd end on time this year, we're just stretching it. But technically, in terms of the, whatever you call it, the fall solstice, is that a thing? Whatever
the actual summer, we are still on time. Yeah. We did get it in before Labor Day, but we got it in before the end of summer officially.
Yeah.
So,
and I'm tired of people, as much as I love Halloween and can't wait for the fall season, I kind of hate how people are like, well, summer's over. I'm like, well, technically it's not. You could have still fun in summer and still get ready for the fall. Stop killing summer too early, you know?
And it's getting earlier every year too. Like they're pushing Halloween, and I mean, this year, not that I'm complaining because I love my pumpkin spice, but I mean, I was seeing pumpkin spice products the first week of August this year, which is kind of crazy. But anyway.
Yeah, I have a feeling why. My theory is because of all the people stocked up early because of the tariffs and everything. They try to get every product in, so they're like, oh crap, now we got all this pumpkin spice and it's only August, but you know what, let's start releasing it.
We're doing the Insidious series. This episode we're going to cover the first two films in the series, and our next episode will cover the final three. I don't know if there's any more planned at all. I haven't heard
there
any more.
There is one more I heard now is in the works possibly, which I'm like, I don't know. You'll hear, I think, as we go through it, probably more in the second episode, but I think the series may have run its course, but...
Yeah, I think so. Oh, I did want to mention, we don't typically do first chops, but I think it's relevant for this episode, and that is that I went to see The Conjuring Last Rites, which, the Conjuring series is kind of connected to the Insidious series through James Wan, of course, and Patrick Wilson. But I really liked it. We went and saw it in the theater, of course, because it just came out, and the kids wanted to go. And I'll tell you, I've always liked the Conjuring series. I did not like the third one, though. I wasn't a big fan of the third one. And this was the same director. So going into this, I really didn't have very high expectations. But it's a lot of fun. It's I'm not going to say it's like super scary, because I don't think any of the Conjuring movies are like that scary. But it's got a lot of the Ed and Lorraine Warren dynamic is a lot more upfront. The case is interesting. I don't know. I just really enjoyed it. I don't know what other people are thinking about it. Of course, based on the box office, apparently people really liked it because it got really good box office returns.
But I mean, it's weird. I've seen like mixed review. Like I've seen some people love it and some people are like annoyed by it. Like they didn't like it like at all. And I don't know if it's just burnout or it's, who knows anymore what's going on. I can't even I can't predict anything anymore with people these days. So I can't figure out what they're going to like, what they're not going to like.
It's I don't want to say it's a slow burn, because it's not like it's a slow burn in the traditional sense in which the whole movie's slow and then there's a big bang payoff. There's stuff that happens throughout the movie. But I will say there are a lot of downtime moments in the movie that are more focused on the relationship between Ed and Lorraine and their daughter. That is not strictly horror.
Good. Yeah.
But I like that. I enjoyed that part of it, because I like Vera Farmiga, I like Patrick Wilson, I liked their characters, I liked that whole thing I was interested in. So that to me did not feel slow, it did not feel boring. I could see maybe if you're just there just for the jump scares and stuff, where that kind of stuff could make you think that the movie was a little slow. I could see that. And it's a long movie. It's every bit of 2 hours. I didn't look at the exact runtime, but I know we were in that theater a good 2 hours. So, I don't know. I enjoyed it though. I'll be interested to see what you guys think when you watch it. But for me, it was my second favorite out of the 4 Conjuring movies.
See, I wanted to go see it, but I hadn't get time. I never saw 3 because all I heard was bad things about 3. So I never had to. I mean, I own it, and then I planned to see it. I just never got around to it yet. And then the 4th one came out, and I'm like, well, I just don't have. I have a hard enough time getting to see the 4th one, let alone try and shoehorn the 3rd one in before it. So it's just we're too much. We're still kind of prepping, but You can't see this on there, but I'll start posting it on Instagram once it's complete. But the monolith has arisen.
It has
It's
risen from the
reborn. It's
grave.
not. Yeah, it's not as big. But it's a shelf is missing, and the problem is I could have rebuilt like a second mini monolith, but IKEA, like right after the original monolith, kind of we bought all the stuff for it. They stopped making it, so I can't even get parts for it. So so it's like that's what it is. So I have like an extra like half monolith shelf. I guess I'm gonna save it just think if we ever move again and I get a longer wall. Um, but yeah, so so I have to buy this other unit, which maybe we'll do a contest or name it. I mean, right? I was joking. It's because it like it turns around. Supposedly it's a shelf that spins and it holds like 800 and something Blu-rays. So I was nicknaming it just for the interim the Spinolith, which just sounds stupid. But maybe we'll get a name like for it. We'll do like a contest or something because I still have some prizes floating
Yeah.
around that we still owe people from last year's horror challenge, which again, while we don't do the first chop, we'll do a preview episode for the horror challenge soon. But let me tell you, Tim is I don't know if by the time you're hearing this, you may have seen it on Blue Sky, but Tim made a tease. But and I know we've said this before, but this may be the hardest and most sinister. I mean, this involves like actually location changes kind of
This
thing
one gets
here.
kind of
And
meta. Yeah, this challenge gets kind of meta where
yeah,
you'll actually have to do things while watching movies. It's
yeah. So
it's insane. Like to me already I can tell that this is going to be the hardest one. I'm just going to
yeah,
go out and say it.
but
And we try to do that. To be fair, we always say, oh, you say that every year, but we try to up it every year. We're intentionally
yeah,
trying to make it harder every year, so we are allowed to say it. So yeah,
yeah, and this one, I think this will be just will be hard. And I still have a couple ones I just didn't know how to like, word it yet. That may even top what's already there. I gotta, like Tim when he saw it, he texted me, he says, "Oh my god." He keeps saying, 'cause I said, "Go look what I added," and then it's like, and then Tim added one today. He's like, "Yeah, I might have just stopped that one," and then he added it, and that is because, and I'm like, he's like, "I don't even know if this one exists," but I quickly went on because I will say before I ever release this, I actually go, and you could say this is like cheating because I'm getting a head start, but not really. It's literally making sure that whatever I throw out there can be accomplished in some way.
right. And we're the ones creating it. How can we not be ahead of the game?
Yeah, I mean, I
We're
have to
actually
verify. I
creating
don't
it.
want to throw something out there that just can't be done, you know? So yeah, so I quickly found something, a couple of things that do fit. And then Tim said, well, if you just do this, maybe you'll find something. I said, oh, that's a good point too. So there are ways to do it, and we'll explain like little tricks and tips. We always give you tips on how to
Yeah,
help.
we'll give you
But
tips.
yeah, I think this one is just like I kind of went on like I don't know. I just sat last night. I sat down with the Civil Gore, which is which is actually part of the challenge too. I guess I don't want to give that away, but we've mentioned it before, the Civil Gore is a whiskey sour with 3 cherries, and I sat
Has to
down
be
with that
3.
yesterday and added like about 7 challenges that are just 7 objectives that will be very challenging.
Yeah, I'm gonna still contribute because I've got a few more in mind.
Yeah. No,
But
this
yeah,
one's definitely a team effort this year. Tim and I are really working hard to combine our strength and sadistic natures to give you something hard.
to Brian's credit, he usually does like 95% of them. But this year I'm trying to add a little bit more input into this because I really want to make this one super hard for everybody. So
Yeah,
yeah,
Jeff and Cody
it
are
should be
probably
fun.
just like, "Oh no.
You're like, oh
Oh
crap.
no.
Yeah,
What
they
are you
know.
guys doing to us?"
All right, well, let's get to the Insidious series. Insidious came out in 2010, directed by James Wan, starring Patrick Wilson as Josh Lambert, Rose Byrne as Renee Lambert, Ty Simpkins as Dalton Lambert, Lynn Shay as Elise Rainier, Lee Winnell as Specs, Angus Sampson as Tucker, and Barbara Hershey as Lorraine Lambert. A family looks to prevent evil spirits from trapping their comatose child in a realm called the Further. I remember when this came out, I was so hyped for it because I had heard how scary it was. Everybody said, "Oh my god, this is the scariest thing ever!" Like, and I did not get to see it in the theater, and so I was waiting for it to come out on video. And I think for some reason or the other, I didn't get to see it until like well after it was released. So I was like super hyped when I saw this movie, like super super hyped. Like I thought it was going to be like the scariest thing ever. And to its credit, it was in one particular way, which I'll go into a little bit later. But yeah, so this one to me, and I wanted to get this thought out here before I forget it, because I've been thinking about this like all week. To me, what James Wan was able to do, and believe he's Malaysian Australian uh, birth, but I believe what he was able to do is take the Asian horror, and I'm going to use the word extreme horror, but I don't mean it in the way that we typically call extreme horror. Extreme horror, we typically is like, like taboo subjects and super ultra gore. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about extreme in terms of being more intense than Western horror movies typically are. And I would say Asian horror typically was more intense, like their supernatural movies were more intense. I feel like James Wan took the intensity of Asian horror and brought it into Western culture, if that makes any sense. Because we had
Yeah, that's a good point.
In the early 2000s, we had those remakes of Asian horror like The Grudge and The Ring, and those were all well and good. But I think he took that kind of aesthetic, but transferred it out of the Asian culture and into like a Western culture, where the ghosts are more of a Western style kind of thing. And I think that's why this was so effective, because I don't think we had seen that really before. Western ghost movies are typically maybe a little bit romanticized and just weren't as intense as what you were used to from like Asian ghost stories. And this kind of brought that into the Western culture. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's kind of how I felt. And I think that's why this really clicked. And I think that's why, and it's exploded with all the Conjuring movies are the same way. Um, Anything he touches has that, to me, has that little bit of intensity to it, supernatural intensity that wasn't there before he came along. So that's what I
Yeah,
thought
no,
about
no,
Insidious.
I agree. And you know what it was? It's funny. I saw that when I saw it, I didn't see it in the theater either. I saw it right when it came out on Blu-ray. I remember I was excited for it myself. So I got it on Blu-ray, watched it right away. Um, and I really liked it. And I've seen it a couple times since then, but it, and this is just the first one. Now I've seen a lot of. It wasn't until this time when I watched it where I noticed, and this people are like, "What do you mean you didn't notice it till the?" But I don't know. I think because I like you, I was caught up in that element of it about the how they kind of that Asian extreme horror element kind of was flowing around. But this time I think I don't know. Maybe it's because when I watch it for a Slaycation, I tend to have like a different lens, like an
Mhm.
internal lens when I watch these to try and kind of notice more things. Sometimes it's to the detriment of the movie, sometimes it's to the benefit, but I noticed how similar this was to Poltergeist in a lot of ways, where you have a kid that gets taken off into another world, you have a parent that goes in to try and find it, you have
Oh,
a
you're
team
right.
that shows up with someone who's, like, knows everything that's going on, you got a woman that knows what's going on, you got 2 bumbling guys, one even with glasses that they call specs,
Oh,
just
you're
like
right.
in
'Cause
the
Elise would be the
With,
um
Zelda Rubinstein,
Zelda
just taller
Rubinstein
and
character. Yeah.
skinnier and
Yeah.
less
It
squeaky.
very much
But,
is when now that you point that out. Yeah.
yeah, and it wasn't until this time watching it where I'm like, "Hmm." And maybe it's because we did Poltergeist somewhat recently in the Slaycation too, and I watched it not too long ago when we saw again when we went to, when we did the horror house, at Universal
Yeah.
Studios, and, Poltergeist's house is again back, this time, but at Hollywood, which I'm very excited for because I think it's the same house just with some added stuff. So I'm
Oh,
super
nice.
excited to go back on to go through that house again. Yeah, so I just noticed that it was a lot of but, I mean, it still did a lot of creepy things, like, because obviously in the Poltergeist, world, it was that's where it differs, and that's where your point comes in, where, it was a lot of creepy things, like, stuff in the background, like, Poltergeist kinda just hit you with it straight on, like, smacked you right in the
Yeah.
face with things going on, whereas this one did little creepy things with things in the background, things popping out, a lot more jump scares, and and it just had a little different dynamic there. And of course, it went back where it started to create a family history and a lore that Poltergeist didn't have because Poltergeist was kind of it was the house, it was the location. This it links it to the entire family and how the family can do so. It definitely did differ, but like the basic structure of it, like some of the bones of it seemed very like much like Poltergeist, and that's not a bad thing. I'm just saying it was more I just wanted to point out that I'm like, "Oh, I never noticed that." And maybe it was an intentional homage in there because
Yeah,
who
well, I
doesn't
never
love
noticed it either
Poltergeist?
till you just said it. Like, that's a really good point. Yeah, and I like this one because, and we'll get into our rankings in our second episode when we talk about the whole series. But I really like this one because it did establish that lore, it established the family, it established the Lynn Shay character of Elise, who's who can go into the further. Like the whole concept of the further was really cool as well. I thought, and it just felt like it kind of the whole movie kind of feels like a haunted house. Not as much as
Yeah.
chapter 2, which we'll get into, but um it kind of has that feel and I just really liked everything about it. And this movie, to to my mind, has, and I'm a jump scare expert because I hate them, but this movie has one of my top 5 jump scares of all time in it. And that is the scene, spoiler alert if you haven't seen this movie, but it's from 2010 if you haven't seen it by now. I can't help you. But the scene, the famous scene where it cuts to Patrick Wilson sitting in the chair, and then it cuts back, and then it cuts back, and when it cuts back to him, you see the red faced demon behind him.
Yeah.
Um, that scared the crap out of me when I first saw it. I mean, that again, if I had to name top 5 jump scares, number 1 would probably be Woman in Black. Um, Another one would be Exorcist. I don't want to put them in the exact order, but obviously the
Yeah.
Exorcist 3 head chopping scene. Um, and this one would definitely be in there for the wreck in the attic. That would be one of them. But this one's in the top 5 for the
Yeah.
as bad as it scared me.
Yeah, no, and there were some genuine creepy like that little kid, like, hopping around kinda
Yeah, the
thing,
little kid
and,
thing was
you know,
really
the
scary.
and of course, the tip throws through the tulips, and I like the fact that, like, they kind of established she was a musician in it, kinda thing too, so it kinda made sense that she'd be listening to, like, a record, there would be a recordy kinda soundtrack in it going on, and it's just like, it's even creepier when you know that that's the song that Tiny Tim was actually singing when he had his heart attack, so it adds a little
Well,
element to it.
it's funny because that song's used a lot. My daughter watches a lot of TikTok videos, of course, and you see that pop up again and again in like creepy TikTok videos. And I'm thinking, some of these kids may not even realize that the creep factor of that song probably came in part from this movie, popularized that
Oh,
song
yeah.
being creepy. It used to not be creepy. I remember when Tiptoe Through the Tulips was just a silly novelty song. It didn't
Yeah, you
have a
used to
creep
laugh
factor
at
to.
it.
Yeah, you used to laugh at it. It had no creep factor whatsoever. This movie kind of turned it creepy. I
It
don't know that this is the movie that made it creepy, or if there were other films before this that actually used it as well. I don't know, but I know this film at least had a hand in popularizing that song as being creepy versus silly. But
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, because I think it was, like, the way they put it with the visual, the combination of the 2 just was so but, like, I mean, I can't think, like, and it's funny because I think it's the juxtaposition of a silly song with a creepy image makes it work, if you had, like, a creepy music to it, you would expect something creepy to happen, but when you hear, like, "Tip you hear that, you expect something funny to happen, like she was gonna trip and fall and the plant was gonna tip over, silly, like, slapstick, but instead you get, like, a creepy crap bag kid, and it's like, it's just the whole element in there. It's like and it's just cool. And what I think I like is, like, in this too, is that, like I mean, everyone, of course, remembers, like, anyone's gonna love Lynn Shay, and she is so good, but I
yes,
also think one of and I am a huge Rose Byrne fan. She could do
hmm
anything. I adore her. But I think one of the biggest elements that, like, don't get talked about enough in this is Barbara Hershey, how good she is in it as the
hmm
mom, because she has a very interesting role because 'cause she's gotta, like, almost, like, bridge the lore while, like, Elise can come out flat out tell you the lore, like, Barbara Hershey is, like, the living lore, about how she has to come in, so I think I mean, I think the cast on this was really good, like, and of course,
yeah,
you get the goofy Ty Simpkins and Lee Wanell as Specs, and it's like, you get the those 2 guys, which are kinda like the lovable duo in there, and, I mean, they get weird. Their characters definitely develop into, like, almost like a caricature of themselves towards the end there, but
Yeah,
towards the end of the franchise, but I still like them. I think they're needed. They're a link that, it's so
they add a
you're
little
not
bit of
just
comic
linking.
relief to what is a
Yeah,
very dark subject matter.
yeah,
I mean, there's really no levity in this movie except for them. Like they are definitely the needed humor outlet because otherwise the movie would be
yeah,
incredibly dark. But you're right.
yeah,
I do think that is a flaw that I did not really care for in the later entries is they kind of became almost cartoon like in terms of
yeah.
their portrayal. But yeah, I didn't mind them. The cast is incredible, and I think that's what makes this movie work. And this predated The Conjuring by 3 years. And you can see with The Conjuring how it kind of built upon the way the scares were crafted in Insidious. Like Insidious kind of set the stage for this new intense supernatural horror, and then The Conjuring kind of built off of it. And then they kind of swap places back and forth because both of these franchises were going on at the same time. But you could definitely see how this set the foundation for the scares that would later come in The Conjuring, which I think personally, I find the Conjuring series to be much more entertaining and to some degree scarier. I've definitely got my preference there. And if we ever do the Conjuring series, we've talked about maybe doing the entire Conjuring, like
Yeah, we almost
every
did that, and
spinoff.
that's
Yeah,
yeah, and which we still could do. I mean, we were gonna do the total. I think the like the what do we call it? The Wan universe or the
the Wanton
Blumhouse?
universe. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, kind of thing. But that didn't really like this one is okay to be separate because I think like all the other things spun off of Conjuring, most of the
yeah.
ones we were going to talk about. So that one we could do a whole summer slaycation on, and this one kind of makes sense for it to be separate. I think.
Yeah, yeah, but you kind of see where the foundation was and how it. I think I think The Conjuring. I think it overall improved upon this formula a little bit, and I think the reason I like The Conjuring more is because of the Ed and Lorraine Warren characters. I think added something to it that I just found more interesting. Not that I don't love Lin Shaye to death. I love Lin Shaye,
Yeah.
and she really is the heart and soul of the Insidious franchise. But to me, the Ed and Lorraine Warren thing almost added like this kind of weird, like I won't say Mulder and Scully because Scully was a skeptic, and then Ed and Lorraine are definitely
Yeah.
both on the same page. But it kind of added this every Conjuring movie feels like the monster of the week in an X-Files episode. It's like their new
Yeah.
case they're going to. I just thought that was cool. I just like that aspect of it, and that's why I kind of preferred it over this. Whereas I felt like the Insidious movies, there's a formula to it, and to me it got kind of tiresome. Like, okay, I
I
know
agree. Yeah.
weird things are going to happen, and then they got to go into the further, and there's a bunch of ghosts in the further, and then they got to come back out. Like, it's the same movie over and over and over, essentially. The only thing they're changing is who's involved and at what time period.
Yeah, no, and I like the one thing you like the fact that they kind of like play with the thing they use to their advantage. I mean, granted, it's their universe; they could do what they wanted, but like the fact that you can go back and kind of go back in time, like in the
Yeah.
further kind of thing, which is kind of ironic because you figure you should just go to the future because it's further. But you know, but yeah, I don't know. I think they need to make one called the God further. Like someone should be the God further.
Do you
But yeah,
wonder
I mean.
if Stranger Things, the Upside Down, if that's somehow inspired from the further?
I mean, it
'Cause
could.
it's
I
a
mean,
very
granted,
similar feel.
yeah. I mean, and granted, Stranger Things is one of the best things to ever come out onto television. And granted, if you notice, like I saw a thing the other day. They basically said the last season is all like movie length like, episodes. It's like
Yeah.
almost like one and a half hours to 2 hours, these episodes. So you're getting, like, basically 8 movies of Stranger Things coming up. That's how involved that's why it took so long probably to get this whole season done. But yeah, but again, what I was gonna say was, though, is yes, it borrowed from a lot of things, Stranger Things. It had a lot of '80s nostalgia. It had, like, it homaged a lot of stuff. Now, granted, this was, Insidious was 2000, but doesn't mean some of that didn't seep in, you
Yeah.
know?
But yeah, you'll find, and we'll talk about it more in our next episode. Like this series just becomes incredibly formulaic, and I think it's because, with the Conjuring series, even though Ed and Lorraine Warren are the core characters that don't change, the setting changes every time, the story changes every time, the family they're interacting with changes every time, and it kept things really fresh. And each Conjuring movie, every situation is completely different. Like the first house haunting is completely different from the Enfield poltergeist haunting of the second movie, which is completely different from the Devil Made Me Do It law case of the third movie, which is completely different from the Smurl case of the fourth movie. So they all feel incredibly different. Whereas Insidious, I felt like the first movie was great because we'd never seen this before. Introduced the family, introduced the further. That's why I think people wisely consider it the best of the franchise. But you'll see as we get into Insidious 2, it's really more of the same. Insidious 3 is really more of the same except a prequel. And then Insidious 4 is...
It's still a prequel, I think, technically, right?
I think it's still a prequel, but still more of the same. And then
like a later prequel.
And then Insidious 5 is the first one that's not more of the same, but it's just boring. So we'll get into that later.
Yeah, basically.
It's so that's the reason I think this series kind of suffered. I think this series kind of probably should have stopped at maybe 2 movies, 3 at the most. It should have been done.
Yeah. Well, speaking of 2, let's go on to 2 because 2 wasn't. It's funny in our rankings. I figured Tim thought I was going to rank 2 a little higher than I did. But we'll get into that next episode. But I had a reason why. But still, 2 was not bad either. But I feel like 1 and 2 was like one long movie almost at some level. But 2 did enough. But 2 separated it enough to where 2 was the second half and wasn't as good as the first half. So that's why it kind of maybe where it went in my thing. I mean, it's not like it's the last one by far. I mean, I'm sure you'll tell where we're going, but.
Let me go through the bookkeeping because it's kind of difficult because when we get to our next episode where we talk about 3, I'm going to reference 2 a lot. So it's we're kind of splitting the discussion there. But Insidious Chapter 2 came out 3 years later in 2013, again directed by James Wan, starring Patrick Wilson again as Josh Lambert, Rose Byrne again as Renee Lambert, Ty Simpkins as Dalton Lambert again, Lynn Shay as Elise Rainier, Lee Winnell as Specs, Angus Simpson as Tucker. They're all back. Barbara Hershey as Lorraine Lambert, Steve Coulter as Carl, and Jocelyn Donahue as the young Lorraine. The Lamberts believe that they have defeated the spirits that have haunted their family, but they soon discover that evil is not beaten so easily. Okay, so this essentially becomes the Poltergeist 2 of the franchise because you basically have the same cast of characters. It's just they've shifted and now they're running into the same kind of thing. Here was my problem with Chapter 2, and it's going to be hard to talk about this without talking about 3 because I have to explain why I liked 3 better. But I don't want to get into it because that's next episode. But let's just suffice it to say that I constantly had this phrase running through my mind when I was watching Chapter 2, and the phrase was "try hard," and that's if you're
is that the Bruce Willis movie? Oh no!
If your kids ever play Fortnite, there was a term for anybody that was basically going all out and doing all kinds of crazy stuff, but they weren't actually good at the game. My son
that was like me when that Helldivers game from the other night.
Yeah, he's like
diving.
He's like, my son would be like, "You stupid tryhard." Basically, you're making this. Your effort to make this better is so obvious that it's not better. It almost defeats the purpose of what you're trying to do. And I felt like Insidious Chapter 2 was trying so hard to up the stakes of the first one and make more scares and more jump scares and more things and more happening and more further and more Elise and more this and more that. It almost became noise to the point where it numbed me to the movie. The tension and the suspense and the fear of the first movie were dissipated because Chapter 2 was trying so hard to be scarier that it actually became less scary to me. I don't know if that makes any sense whatsoever. It felt like going through a Universal haunted house after you like if Insidious 1 was the first house you go through the season, Chapter 2 is at the end of the night when you're going through your 8th house and you've had a few drinks. And at that point, it's just all noise.
I know what you mean. Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's what I was kinda saying about how it's, like, almost like if it's, like, one movie, but like, because in terms of the story is, like, does it really you kind of could have put a lot of what was in the second one, like, filtered into the first one a little bit, so you didn't really while you gained some new stuff, you didn't get, like, I feel like you didn't get a full movie, if that makes sense, kinda
yeah,
thing, because I think it wasn't anything new. Like, I loved the addition of Jocelyn Donahue because I think she's great, and actually, it's funny, did you know, though, that whoever they picked for young Elise, look had her dead on, but the voice, they said they couldn't match her voice, so they actually dubbed her in, and
yeah. I
it's
noticed they
done so
dubbed her.
well.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
did
it's
notice they
done
dubbed
so
her.
well, though.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
done really
but
well. Yeah,
I mean, like, I think it's just, like, you got kinda more of you got a lot more of the first similar the first one, but like, I think you could have possibly, we were just joking about something earlier about, like, a mega cut of something, but, like, if you could it was something about we went on
yeah. Like,
before we recorded, we went into our Red Tim Halloween Blumhouse rant kinda thing. Like, this, like, they could have probably made a longer first movie and included a lot of this from the second and still would have been okay. But granted, I see why you broke because I think after a while, with horror movies, especially ones that were like Insidious, if you make them too long, and I think that's the problem with the last one, it was almost 2 hours, and it's too long
yeah,
for that. Um but I think when you make it too long, you start to desensitize yourself from the dread of it because you kinda like, unless it's done really well and does enough to keep you interested, like you said, you mentioned that it was The Conjuring 4 was, like, almost 2 hours, and a lot of people, you said it might have been a slow burn because they went into the elements of their relationship. Well, there's the difference, you broke it up with something that was
yeah.
more pretty substantial, and this they tried to do it, and again, this is not a bad film, part 2.
Oh,
It's just
2
it's
hours
why it
15 sorry, 2 hours 15 minutes, Conjuring Last Rites. So
wow,
it's
that's
over 2
long, so
hours. It's
you
long, so I
kinda
could
need
that's
to put
yeah.
yeah, you need to put something you can't have just 2 hours and 15 minutes of constant, like, ghost stuff. You gotta break it up with some other kind of appeal, especially when we've seen so many paranormal movies that have that same kind of, like, things to it, you know? So it's
Yeah,
like, I
this one became fatiguing to me, like, it was now and it's kind of funny because it's a double-edged sword. I actually ranked this one higher because it has so many scares in it, but
yeah,
so it was not ranked number 2 because it was too much, but it was ranked number 3 because it had a lot of stuff.
yeah.
So it's funny,
Yeah,
like,
it's
it
very
wasn't the
interesting franchise. This is a
yeah.
very interesting franchise in terms of trying to rank it and explain it, honestly, because
But
it's just
yeah, so
like
it's like its strengths were also its weaknesses for me.
yeah.
I think coming right off of Insidious, it had too much sequelitis. It was too much more, bigger, bigger, better, better. It was too much coming off of the first one, and that
It
ranked it
wasn't
down.
needed for that, even though it was
Yeah,
great stuff, it wasn't needed, I think, for the narrative of the 2 films together.
and the
So,
reason I'm jumping ahead a little bit. The reason I ranked number 3 above this one is because it did not suffer from sequelitis. It wasn't trying to be bigger, badder, better. It was simply trying to tell a different story, different time period. It was more refreshing. So uh that's why so this one's the strengths of it weakened it from the number 2 slot. But at the same time, the strengths of it, which are the constant scares, the core group, the core cast is back. Those kept it still in the top 3 because those things were
right.
important when you compare them to the 4th and 5th films. So, yeah, like I said, the strengths and were its weaknesses. Now, some people, I've looked at other rankings. A lot of people will put this as the number 2 in the franchise. Um,
Yeah.
and I could see the argument for that too. It was a James Wan, because James Wan's back directing much of the same cast. I mean, on paper, it definitely feels like this should be in the number 2 slot, but we'll have our
Yeah.
reasons for why we like number 3,
Yeah,
in our next episode.
yeah, the positives, though, is I'm sorry, there was a new character, I mean, not just Jocelyn Donahue and, per se, but like a new character kind of in the present storyline of Carl, which I liked. I thought that was a cool character, and I liked how he was trying to, you know, contact. I mean, you know what? Actually, just let me think about it. I mean, maybe it's still, maybe it couldn't make one whole film like between the two because there was enough stuff like where they went back, and they were misled into the further to contact the least. Maybe it needed to be a second one. Maybe that's not accurate as
It's not
description when
feasible
I said
to
that.
do it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. So I guess maybe that's why they need a second one. I don't know. It's just something a little bit. Like, maybe you said maybe it's just a flat out sequelitis, but I did like how there was new elements, like how they went like, I mean, it's funny, it's like the title works really well because these demons that they encounter and these creatures are kind of insidious. I mean, and like they let flat out, they prey on somebody's, like they were hopeful that they could contact the lease and get an answer, and they were doing that. I like that cool stuff with the dice where they're rolling
Yeah.
the
I mean,
stuff
they
like that
definitely
kind of was
expanded the
cool.
lore. They expanded the lore.
Yeah.
Like it was that all that was good. All that worked in its favor.
Yeah. Maybe I'm being too hard on it. I mean, I still think I'm gonna rank it. I'm not changing my ranking because because I think some of the things we said still apply. I just maybe I was a little too hard on it, saying, "Oh, it wasn't needed. You could have just put it all in the
Yeah.
first film." You probably couldn't have because then what it might have been that problem I said earlier, being too long. Um, but yeah, no, I did like that. I did like the elements of that, and and it kind of it definitely raised the stakes and made it, but I don't know. I'm not. Yeah, this is a hard franchise to do, and I think I'll explain this more in the next week's episode because it'll become. I think it explains the rankings a little bit better, and I think we kind of discussed it. Kind of, you feel the same way with it, but we'll get into that more next week. But yeah, no, I mean, overall, it's definitely not a bad, but I mean, I remember again, I know people are getting sick of us when we say this, but you gotta remember we're watching these as, where they fit in with the franchise of films. So, while it sounds like we may be being a really hard on a film, it's not that we're being hard on the film in the scope of filmmaking and horror
Right.
genre,
Right.
it's, just this franchise. We're trying to kind of like keep it in this box of the franchise, and that's where it also makes it difficult sometimes to rank or critique a movie because you may be a little hard on it compared, like if I was going to rank this up against some of the other paranormal stuff you find on Tubi. Nothing against Tubi, I love Tubi, that. Just their screening process is like, I think if it's a movie and it has a title, they'll add
They
it.
put it on there. Yeah.
And actually, I think I've seen one without a title, come to think of it. But, no, but yeah, no, so it's like when you compare it to regular paranormal film, I mean, this is definitely in the upper echelon here. We're talking about, James Wan. We're talking about a cast, an incredible cast. So it can only be so, it's while it's like it may not be number one in this franchise, it's still probably in the way upper echelon of paranormal and demonic films.
Yeah.
So,
I try not to I really try hard to try hard. I'm a try hard.
oh, Tim's
I
a tryhard.
no, I do really try to when I'm doing these rankings, I'm really only considering the other films in the series. I'm not comparing it to The Exorcist. I'm not comparing it
Yeah.
to Amityville Vibrator. I'm not. I'm just comparing it to the
We gotta
franchise
review that
itself.
one day.
I know we got
Somehow we
to.
gotta review that.
But yeah, so
But,
I'm trying. I like you said, I'm keeping these in a box, and I'm really trying to compare them to each other. That's how they're getting ranked. I'm blocking out all other horror movies. I'm blocking out everything else, and trying to be fair to rank these. And like I said, we've always said this: when you're watching these things back to back, and you've got to watch 2, 3, 4, 5 movies in a week's span, which sounds that's easy. It's not easy when you got kids and
yeah,
jobs and everything else, and you're trying to fit these movies in your free time, of which you have very precious little, and you're trying to watch
yeah.
these. It does color your perception differently than when you watch these spaced years apart, or you caught them on TV, or you caught them on,
Or like
watching these things back to back. You see the number one, you see the flaws that are much
yeah,
more apparent when you're watching them back to back. You also sometimes see things that are positive, that you
yeah.
forget because you went years between 2 movies and you go, wait a minute, this movie did a really good job of calling back to that movie, but you would have never
Right.
caught that
Yeah,
if you'd seen it 3 years later.
the glow is not like, the excitement of after 3 years, we got our next Insidious movie, and then, it might be a letdown just because you built it up in your head for 3 years,
Right, yes,
So,
it's definitely I would encourage anybody. I know most of you out there have done, movie marathons of Friday the 13th or something, but it really is a different experience when you're watching movies back to back in a series that originally came out years apart. It just totally colors your perception, sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a bad way. But I always give that as a caveat because these rankings, when you're listening to this as a podcast listener and you've seen these movies over a period of years, you might be going, "You guys are crazy. What the hell are you thinking about putting this movie near the top or putting this movie near the bottom?" But go back and watch everything back to back and then see
yeah.
if our rankings more closely align to yours. But
Yeah,
anyway,
and
so
that's why we stand with our Children of the Corn 3 Big Corn ranking,
yes,
just for that
exactly.
reason, yeah.
But yeah, so that's our first two movies in the Insidious franchise. We knew these episodes were gonna be kind of short. We're recording them back to back.
Yeah.
So we were trying to keep these around the 45-minute mark. So yeah, that was the first two Insidious movies. In fact, like I said, I really enjoyed these.
Yeah.
Even two, even though we were a little hard on it, I still really enjoyed it. The next three are going to be interesting to talk about. I think it's actually going to be more interesting to talk about
Yeah.
because of the different good and bad aspects. So join us next week as we cover Insidious Chapter 3, which is a prequel. Insidious: The Last Key, which is a lesser prequel. I guess it's a prequel, but not as far back.
They need to come up with a term. It's not a prequel. It's not. Oh, it is a prequel, but it's also a requel, but it's a sequel to the prequel. So
Yeah,
a squeakle?
a
I don't
squeakle.
know.
I don't know, a
We
squeakle.
need
I
to
don't know
come
what
up
it
with a
is.
term.
And then
We got to come up with a term.
the latest entry in the franchise, which was Insidious: The Red Door, which is an actual sequel to Part
Yes.
2, which takes place many years later. As we'll see, Dalton has grown up and is now in college.
Yes.
So
Nice.
we'll talk about those next week, and we hope to see you then.
Yeah.
Stay out further.